So let me just say, there is no doubt that I am a pro-nuclear person, right? This is a fact. But I am also a pro-renewables person. I am also a pro-hydropower person. And frankly, I also recognize that we are going to need some fossil fuels for a few years yet. We are not ready to give them up all completely. So the way I look at this, I am a very realistic person. The size and the urgency of the challenge that we have in front of us as a human community is enormous.
That was a short snippet from this week's conversation. Stay tuned, as always, an interesting conversation coming your way. Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Mission Shunya podcast. The podcast where we bring you stories at the intersection of sustainability, technology and the energy transition. First things first, I hope you are doing well. Well, I also hope you're enjoying the nuclear energy series. And today's episode is yet another interesting conversation coming your way. On today's episode, we have someone who has a front row seat to the evolving role of nuclear power in clean energy strategies worldwide. But what exactly does our association do? How does it influence policy, perception, and progress across regions? And what are the challenges of being both a promoter and a representative of an entire sector, especially one as debated as nuclear? In this conversation, I aim to take a neutral stance, asking the tough questions around bias, accountability, and transparency, while also learning about the association's role in shaping the global energy conversation. From nuclear growth targets post COP28 to how different countries are navigating the nuclear futures, this is a wide-ranging conversation filled with insight, perspective, and a whole lot more. So, who's our guest for today, and how excited is she with her role? Let's dive in.
Hello, my name is Sama Bilbao y León. I am Director General of World Nuclear Association. As the organization that unites and represents the global nuclear industry, it is my absolute pleasure to actually be in a position to bring the essential role of nuclear energy in the clean energy systems of the future to everybody in the world.
Before we discuss about the work that World Nuclear Association does, let's look at the personal journey. So, you have a PhD in nuclear energy and you have an expertise in that. So, why nuclear and what was your career like leading up to your current position as Director General at World Nuclear Association?
Yes, I am one of those people that I always wanted to be an engineer. And I always wanted to work in energy because I understood from the very beginning that energy is absolutely essential for progress and for quality of life and for everything in society. So in a very selfish manner, I thought, well, I will always have a job if I work in energy. So I am from Spain originally, and I studied energy technologies in Spain. And very, very quickly, when I finalized my master's in energy technologies, I really zeroed into nuclear very quickly. Nuclear energy was and continues to be, frankly, one of the technologies that have more advantages and less disadvantages. So this is why I pursued a PhD in nuclear engineering. And this is where I have really worked all my career in nuclear energy. I started as a nuclear safety engineer working for a nuclear utility in the US. So I was at Dominion Energy doing the day-to-day work in support of our 7 units at the time. Then I worked for the International Atomic Energy Agency for a few years, where I was responsible for technology development in water-cooled reactors, both light water reactors, but also heavy water reactors. Then I came back to the US, where I created, obviously not by myself, with a group of people, but together we developed the only nuclear engineering program in Virginia, still to this day. So we started this nuclear engineering program from scratch, and yeah, it was fascinating. And I mean, I'm very proud to say that today this is the 18th best nuclear engineering program in the US, as just reported a few months ago by US News and World Report. So I'm very, very proud of the work that we did starting this nuclear engineering program from scratch. Then afterwards, I moved to the OECD Nuclear Energy Agency in Paris, where I led the division on technology development and economics. And then, the opportunity to come to World Nuclear Association came shortly after, and this is where I am. So that's a little bit my journey. I don't know whether you want to go deeper in any of that.
No, perfect. So how did this transition actually happen for a lot of people who are actually working on field in actual projects, then to going into an advisory role, if I may to put it that way? So how did this transition happen? What was your what actually excited you? I'm sure OECD also had some excitement in the role, but what exactly is the big excitement for you in your current role?
Yeah, so I think that I am super lucky because I feel that I am at the perfect place at the perfect time. And what makes my job exciting and unique is to bring together many players, many stakeholders that are working towards moving nuclear energy forward, towards making sure that the essential role that nuclear energy has in today's energy systems and in the future clean energy systems. So, we work together, obviously, with the industry. We are an organization that represents the industry, but we also work with governments. We work with the financiers, the finance community. We work with large energy users, and we are trying to bring together the priorities, the goals, the resources of all these stakeholders to leverage each other's so we can actually achieve the goal. So it's fascinating to be able to sit down with these different people and understand, what are the priorities of different countries, how we can get financiers to support those efforts, how the nuclear industry is going to be there to bring abundant energy to those countries. So no, it's the perfect place, perfect time.
Perfect. It actually is exciting and interesting in a way when you look at the number of stakeholders you have to engage with and talk about some big topics like how nuclear energy is going to shape the global energy transition, etc. But it also brings together its own set of challenges. With so many stakeholders, so many different stakeholders, their perspectives and objectives will definitely be very tough to align. So, as World Nuclear Association, how do you bring alignment from different stakeholders' objectives and key priorities?
It's not really. I mean, I won't say it's easy. Clearly, much work is due in order to make things happen. But I think that the key point here is to listen, right? So at the end of the day, we all have the same goal, right? So countries, I mean, policymakers in countries in the world, they are finally understanding that energy in general is essential. It is an enabler for progress, socioeconomic development, quality of life, industrial development, commerce. All these things will not happen without energy. And at the same time, obviously, countries and policymakers are aware of the importance of sustainability, how climate change is a big challenge that we need to address. And of course, they're aware of the newfound realism and the need for energy independence and energy sovereignty and energy security. So those goals are not different than the goals that other has. I mean, so if you look at technology, or large energy users, they essentially want the same thing because they understand very well that without energy, they cannot operate efficiently, effectively. They cannot deliver their products to their customers. So there is a very clear alignment there. And financiers, clearly, they are in the business of investing money to amplify its value and obviously, hopefully, in the process, making some profit. So the idea here is to make sure that we align the right investors with the right projects. So their risk appetite and their timelines are well aligned. So they can work together. So, and of course, in the middle of all this, in our case, because we are focusing on nuclear energy, making sure that the nuclear industry, who at the end of the day will be the ones that are actually delivering these projects, they have whatever they need, all the tools, the right policies, the right financial frameworks, the right industrial infrastructure to actually deliver.
That is true. Now, if we were to look at your journey as DG for World Nuclear Association, I think it's been about 5 years now. So when you look back, how has this journey been since we have been speaking about your journey? So what would you consider as like a key achievement during your time in the association?
Yeah, so I've been in this role for a little bit more than 4 years. So yeah, it's and actually I started in the middle of COVID. So as you know, at the very beginning, we have many challenges, not necessarily just nuclear. So and what has happened really is in the last 3 years, literally the global stars have aligned a little bit to finally recognize the role of nuclear. As you know, nuclear energy is today and has been for several decades the second largest source of carbon-free electricity at a global level. And if you look at, second only to hydropower. And if you look at OECD countries, nuclear energy is and has been for quite a while the number one source of carbon-free electricity. But of course, if you ask the average person out there, I'm sure that very few people will tell you that nuclear has any role to play in their country, and they probably don't know that there is whatever many nuclear power plants that are providing a huge part of their electricity. So I think that is very important. So that I think that that's one of our achievements, and let me just say, this achievement has culminated in the last 3 years, but the association has been working on this for decades, making sure that the essential role of nuclear was appreciated and recognized and understood and valued. So that was the first thing. But of course, what is the second part of this is in the last 3 years, finally, many policymakers, certainly the large energy users and many others, have understood the essential value of 24/7 reliable, stable energy, which is something that perhaps was taken for granted for a long time. So in that sense, clearly, nuclear energy is in a very, very good position. Nuclear energy, as you know, is one of the few large-scale, scalable that exists today. I mean, it's not a promise; it's a reality that can provide 24/7 carbon-free, affordable energy. And I highlight the word energy, not electricity. As you know, nuclear can produce at the same time electricity, yes, of course, but also steam, heat. And this is going to be absolutely essential. It's going to be a game changer to decarbonize or help decarbonize sectors of the economy that are not easily electrified. So, like the oil and gas industry, upstream, downstream, in whether it's exploration and extraction or refineries, or if you look at the metallurgical industry, chemical industry, sustainable aviation fuel, the shipping industries. So there are many sectors of the global economy that do need, yes, electricity, but also steam, heat in order to operate every day. So that is also finally being recognized, and that means that there is an enormous demand at a global level for maintaining the current fleet, but also building an additional fleet of nuclear reactors.
Well, that's well said. So, if I were to kind of sum up that, the top two achievements would probably be first bringing nuclear energy into mainstream discussion globally. And I think, as you kind of mentioned, your period also culminated with kind of announcement at the COP that we will triple nuclear energy capacity. That was one. And of course, emphasizing the second one, obviously being emphasizing nuclear energy has more value in the grid and in the net zero transition. But if we were to ask you on the next level, what is kind of holding back in the advancement of nuclear energy deployment? What do you think is actually holding back? Since your association has a lot of members across the board, so according to all of them, what is actually holding back from building nuclear plants at scale, at speed, and at economic value?
Yes, well, obviously the situation is different in different parts of the world, right? So we have some parts of the world that they started this journey 20 plus years ago, and they've been investing in their industrial infrastructure for the last few decades, and they are and have been for a while delivering projects on time, on budget for a while. I mean, this is the case of China, the case of Korea, etc. So that is a little bit different, perhaps, than what we are experiencing in Western Europe and in North America, where perhaps in the last 20 plus years, we in fact de-emphasize the role of nuclear energy. And frankly, the entire industry and its supply chain, including workforce, etc., suffer. It was a little bit eroded. So I think that what we are really trying to do, and this is some of the challenges that we are experiencing, is the work that we are doing right now to rebuild all these capabilities, all this infrastructure in countries and regions that perhaps did not consider nuclear as a priority for a while. So this, to us, has three components, and I will tell you very quickly. So number one, working with policymakers and with governments, making sure that we have the right energy policies that recognize and value the attributes of nuclear energy, but very importantly, working with them so we can translate energy policies, which, as you know, are nothing more than goals and objectives. So it's great to have goals and objectives, but it's perhaps much more important to translate those into specific industrial strategies and action plans. So this is the thing that we are doing right now, working with all these policymakers to make sure that those practical and pragmatic strategies are in place. And again, there are different countries are moving at different speeds, and different regions are moving at different speeds. And then the other thing that we are doing, as I mentioned before, but again, this cannot be emphasized enough, is the role of the financial community. All carbon-free technologies, all energy infrastructure projects, as you very well know, are very capital intensive. And this is particularly true for nuclear energy because many of these projects are large. We are talking of gigawatts of a capacity, which means, of course, a large capital investment upfront. Obviously, when you look at the entire life of the project, we are talking about 60, 80, perhaps 100 years. It is a very good business case. The problem, though, is sometimes the timelines of some financiers are not aligned with this longer time frame. So again, a lot of work is taking place to make sure that we work with these financiers to put in place appropriate, sometimes innovative and quite creative frameworks, so these projects can be financed in a way that we distribute the financial risk appropriately among the right stakeholders. And then the third part, which is probably the one that you would like to focus on, is, okay, fine. We have governments, we have financiers, so what is the industry doing? What do we need to do? So we are working with, obviously, our members everywhere in all 43 countries, all continents in the world. We are working with them. Number one, so the idea here is ensure that we can deliver. So, this at speed and scale delivery. So number one is related to licensing and regulatory efforts. We really are trying to streamline, work with the regulators in many countries and in many regions to make sure that we can optimize the way we license these projects, so we can move faster from individual projects to programs, essentially going from the first of a kind to the nth of a kind, making sure that we standardize as much as possible, so we don't have to repeat the analysis and the regulatory efforts in every country and in every jurisdiction. So that's one of the big efforts, and again, that is definitely a little bit unique to nuclear, because, as you know, we are a heavily regulated industry, and that obviously is very impactful. And then the second thing is what I told you before, is supply chains, industrial capabilities, workforce, essentially delivering. And as I said, because these capabilities have been eroded for the last couple of decades, now we have a little bit of an uphill battle. Not so much because it's difficult, it's because it's needed yesterday. So we really are working hard to make sure that we can develop those capabilities as quickly as possible to fit and to fill the needs.
In the conversation so far, we have discussed about all the challenges that we face at the global level from different stakeholders. But one stakeholder we kind of haven't touched so far, but who is also very critical, and you have taken some effort in kind of making sure their voices are heard, is the public and their public perception. Because that is also key to kind of enable this shift and this transition happen. So what is your view? What is your position as an association in enabling or debunking the myths and enabling positive conversations in this space?
Yeah, you said it clearly. No country will move forward with any technology, nuclear energy being one of them, if the public, the average citizen in that particular country doesn't trust that technology, doesn't feel comfortable with that technology. So, if obviously historically nuclear energy has suffered much more misunderstanding than perhaps other technologies. So, as you know, one of the pillars of the work that we are doing in World Nuclear Association is informing and advocating. So we are very proud of the enormous resources that we have in our website. I think we have the largest free-to-access database on anything and everything related to nuclear energy, nuclear science and technology. And again, this information is presented for different audiences and different levels of current understanding. We have some materials that are enormously in depth, market analysis, etc., for specialists, people that are very well informed on that particular area. And then we have some materials that are very, very basic for people that are starting their journey in understanding what nuclear energy is. So we have all that. But at the same time, as you said, we've been incredibly active at a global level to engage with the public, with the average citizen, with the media, and we've been always quite keen to answer all the questions, every question, because as I told you at the very beginning, the key thing that we want to do is listening and understanding what are the aspects of nuclear that people aren't comfortable with, and make sure that we can perhaps, they will decide whether or not their fears are alleviated, but certainly we will put in front of them all the facts and all the information. But let me just, so this is the work that we are doing, but let me just say, in fact, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, we actually launched a new information paper in our website about the global perception of nuclear energy. And I think I hope you will find it interesting that as of today, the majority, or I don't know if the majority, but many countries in the world have their populations have a positive perception of nuclear energy. So if you go to our website, we have what we call the public perception tracker, and you can click on the different countries. I mean, it's a map of the world. You can click on the different countries and see what the most recent surveys that have taken place in that country say that is the perception of in that country about nuclear. So I think that we have experienced an enormous evolution in the way people look at nuclear energy, and I think that this is due at what we discussed earlier on in this conversation. This newfound pragmatism and this newfound realism that we, the average citizen in every country, are finding that we need when looking at energy. It used to be that energy was this thing that, our governments decided, and, we didn't really have a very clear visibility on how had a daily impact on us. And unfortunately, in the last 3-4 years, this has been very clear to many citizens in many countries in the world. As you know, in many countries in Europe, there's been days where people were wondering whether they will have gas or electricity. In fact, just last week in Spain, we didn't have electricity for an entire day. So people now have a very, very close, very personal appreciation of what it's like not to have energy for your daily life. And then the second thing that is just as important, I think, is the issue of affordability. I think that in the last few years, particularly in Europe, but also in North America and in many other countries, the price of energy has skyrocketed. And many people even in very well and advanced countries are actually having to make daily decisions. Do I turn on the heat or do I eat? Do I turn on the air conditioning or do I eat? Can I pay for my gas or how do I do this? So I think that these facts that energy is a very close conversation for many people today has actually made people all over the world to actually do a little bit of research, try to understand what things truly are and truly aren't. And I think that perhaps part of all that new status quo has helped for many citizens at a global level to recognize and understand a little bit more what is true and what is a myth, and what is a myth for nuclear energy.
Well, I must admit that the resources in your website is definitely interesting, and it's also good in a way because when most of the search that I did around this topic actually leads to one or the other article from your website. So that is actually interestingly built, and it's also SEO friendly, if I may put it that way. But it also leads me to one question around your role and what public could also pursue. Reading all the reports, yes, there are all positive. The trends show that nuclear acceptance is increasing year on year across countries. So that is all good. But in your role, if I may ask this question, do people think that you're very pro-nuclear? Because I understand you mentioned a few times in the conversation, one of your key roles or a responsibility in the role is to actively listen to all the stakeholders. When you have all the stakeholders who have skin in the game in nuclear, do you think you tend to get a little pro-nuclear, or how do you maintain the neutral stance at times?
Right. Well, so let me just say, there is no doubt that I am a pro-nuclear person, right? This is a fact. But I am also a pro-renewables person. I am also a pro-hydropower person. And frankly, I also recognize that we are going to need some fossil fuels for a few years yet. We are not ready to give them up all completely. So the way I look at this, I am a very realistic person. The size and the urgency of the challenge that we have in front of us as a human community is enormous. So if we want to ensure that everybody everywhere in our planet has access to abundant, affordable, 24/7 clean energy, and also that we make sure that we minimize the impact of climate change and we ensure that we maintain the quality of our environment, I'm sorry, but there is not one solution that fits all. It is a system. We are going to have a new, completely new, transformed, clean energy system. And this clean energy system is going to include probably most, if not all, the energy sources that I mentioned before. And actually, that system will be different in different regions. We will be different in different countries in the world. So yes, I am pro-nuclear, but I am pro-human beings, pro-planet. This is what I really am. I want to make sure that everybody in our planet today and in future generations have the resources that they need at their fingertips to have the quality of life that you and I enjoy today, while we make sure that we protect our planet. So this is my big message. And yes, I do think that nuclear energy has a key role to play in many jurisdictions, but perhaps certainly not in all countries in the world, certainly not in all regions in the world, but perhaps in many.
I must admit, there is definitely a lot of positive energy, and it clearly demonstrates. It's actually good to see a positive energy from a person who's dealing with big energy problems and projects. And you did mention being realistic about the future. On that, I think I should ask you on a final note. From your view, and you are a nuclear engineer in the first place, what are the big nuclear trends that you see? Of course, everyone sees the same, but as an expert in this field, what are you very, very much optimistic about that will probably be a reality in the next 5 to 10 years? What are the emerging technologies that common people like us should be aware and look forward to in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, 5 to 10 years is literally tomorrow. So this is, even though technology is evolving at breakneck speed, 5 years is tomorrow. So from the nuclear point of view, I think that in the next 5 years, we are going to see already quite a few small modular reactors being deployed in many parts in the world. And I am very excited about this because I think that small modular reactors bring an additional opportunity for nuclear energy. As you know, they bring a new delivery method. So we are going to be able to use these reactors in situations where perhaps larger reactors were not particularly well aligned. So I'm very excited about that. But also, the second thing that I will say that is perhaps not necessarily technology, but I think it's a innovation. I am excited about how the nuclear industry is going to become much more standardized and process oriented when it comes to the delivery of all kinds of projects, large and small. So I think that we are going to see how we are learning from the very good job that we have seen perhaps in the oil and gas industry, or perhaps in all other industries that are very familiar with these mega projects. So I am excited about making the most of the lessons learned that we are grabbing from other industries and other sectors.
Perfect. Just a quick follow-up on the final point. Does that kind of anyway change WNA, World Nuclear Association's priorities in a way?
Well, obviously we are always scanning the horizon, and we are always looking at what are the opportunities and what are the challenges. That's to make the most of the opportunities and to somehow help the industry combat the challenges. So yeah, typically we look at we look at the future all the time, but we realign our strategic plans, every 2-3 years. So I think that right now, as I told you, we are really focusing on delivering on delivery, whether it's supply chain, workforce, licensing, and regulation. So I think that in the next few years, as we see that there is a lot of progress being made in these areas, perhaps we will be able to switch or to pivot our efforts to other areas. So, like for example, there's a large number of countries in many areas of the world, in Central Asia, Middle East, Southeast Asia, Africa. So there's a number of newcomer countries in those regions of the world that would like to have nuclear, but obviously it's going to be a little bit more of an effort to help them. So perhaps we can pivot and put more emphasis in supporting those countries or those regions that are looking at nuclear.
Well, Sama, it's been an absolute pleasure, and it was really interesting to hear your views, and in fact, more interesting to hear it from a passionate person like you in the space. So thanks a lot for taking time to join me on the podcast and share your views and experience from your role.
Well, thank you very much, Girish. It's been my pleasure to be with you. And as always, I am at your disposal. So anything that we can do to support your efforts, thank you for what you are doing to bring together energy, sustainability, ESG, so everybody gets to understand that better.
That was Dr. Sama Bilbao y León giving us a rare behind-the-scenes look at how the World Nuclear Association operates and how it's helping shape the global nuclear conversation. From addressing common misconceptions to aligning nuclear within a broader clean energy framework, this episode highlighted the importance of nuanced leadership in a complex, fast-changing energy landscape. Whether or not you align with everything WNA stands for, understanding the institutional ecosystem around nuclear is key to grasping where the sector is headed and why. So, coming up next, we shift gears from established institutions to frontier science, with a deep dive into the bold world of nuclear fusion startups. We'll explore how Europe is charting its own course away from the traditional giants in a conversation with Renaissance Fusion. So, stay tuned, keep questioning, and keep the curiosity alive. Special thanks to Jacob and the team at Terra Generation for their digital support to the podcast. Terra Generation is a content agency specialized in telling stories around climate, biodiversity, and sustainability. Learn more at terrageneration.com. With that, this is Girish Shivakumar signing off, and as always, thank you for listening.